What is up, everyone? We are back with another episode of Shaping the Culture podcast, and I am geeked about today's guest for our podcast. He's a Minneapolis legend, making great headway, making a splash in the kingdom of God, making reading the Bible fun again and creative and non-boring and all of the above. We've got Zach with us. How you doing, sir?
So good, man. Really appreciate it. I'm so pumped to be here. I love what you're working on and what you guys are doing. So this is amazing. It's an honor, man. Thank you.
Man, no, thank you. Like, this is a real privilege. I've been following you for some time, as I was saying to you off air.
Let's go.
And I just love, I love the Bible, and I love reading and studying the Bible. And I feel like the Bible is rich, but I feel like sometimes the Bible could be stale for some, or boring, or maybe too hard to understand. And what I love about what you're doing, and we'll get into this a little bit later on, is you're just making it more easier for people to consume and understand and digest.
That's it.
So, man, thank you for all that you don't do, bro.
Yeah, man. That means so much, for real. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, for those who are tuning in and don't really have a context to who you are, tell us a little bit about who you are. Who are you? Where do you come from? How did you get here? Yeah.
My name is Zach Windahl. I run a company called The Brand Sunday. So I'm the author of something called the Bible Study, which is a one-year study of the Bible that focuses on how each book relates to your life. We also create other tools to help people grow in their faith, to help understand the Bible better. We basically hold their hands and help them develop holy habits to grow in their relationship with God. I also just released a book yesterday called Launch with God. And so that's a book all about building a meaningful business and living out your God-given purpose. I live back in Minneapolis. So that's what makes this even cooler is that Minnesota natives, both on the same Zoom call. Let's go.
Let's go.
So I spent the last few years down in Miami, but I'm originally from Minneapolis, and so it feels good to be back, man. I mean, we've only been here for a week at this point. I brought my wife up and our dog.
Yeah.
My wife is Puerto Rican, and so she's never had a winter like this before, and so we got a couple months until it's going to be very telling. And we're excited. It's a new adventure for us, so I'm pumped to be here.
Listen, we'll be praying for your wife, bro.
Thank you. That's all I could ask for.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. The last couple of years in Minnesota, the winters have been actually mild. It hasn't been too bad. So we're praying and hoping that we keep the same energy going into this winter.
Yeah, 100%. We're praying for the same thing. We're praying for the same thing for the next 50 years.
I'm with you on that. I'm not opposing that at all. I'm with you, brother.
Right.
Shout out to global warming, man. Shout out to global warming.
Right.
That's awesome. Well, let me ask you this. Like, what kind of gave you the heart to start the Sunday branch project? What was the heart behind that?
Sunday.
The brand. Yes. Man. What kind of led to that? What are the events that led to that? And how did you develop a passion and a heart to create something like that?
Totally. Yeah, man. So I think we got to go like way back in my story even. So I grew up a Christian. My mom is a 4-time cancer survivor. So when I was 4 years old, she was actually sent home with a 5% chance to live. She was skin and bones. But then she was healed from it. Then she got a tumor around her sciatic nerve and was healed from that. Wow. And then she had colon cancer with 3/4 of her colon removed and was healed from that. Wow. And then when I was 15, she had breast cancer, double mastectomy, reconstruction, completely healed from that. So literally from age 4 to 15, I'm seeing God perform miracle after miracle.
Yeah.
And at the same time, even when my mom was so sick and she was on her deathbed, she was always saying to me, it could be so much worse. I could be dead. And that is the way that I was raised. So my whole childhood was seeing, okay, wow, life could be way worse, we
Yeah.
could not be here. So we might as well take advantage of the time that
Mm.
we do have here,
Yeah.
and see God in every moment, and appreciate what we have been given. So
Yeah.
my life was centered around that, just
Yeah.
seeing God move in incredible ways. But then when I hit college, I fell away from my faith because I mean, college when you're 18, 19, it happens for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I wanted to while out for a little
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I had my college years kind of back and forth in my faith, whether or not I was pursuing God or not.
Yeah.
But then in 2014, I hit like a really low spot. I was struggling the hardest with my faith. Like, I don't even know if I want to consider myself a Christian anymore. I don't know if I
Wow.
want to do this.
Yeah.
I like what was going on inside of me just wasn't mixing with all the other Christians that I was around, and I was kind of over it. And so I decided, I said, all right, God, I'm going to give you 2 years. Like, I need you to prove that you're real. Otherwise, like, I'm walking away from my faith completely,
Wow.
which is like crazy looking back on it because I saw him move in such amazing ways.
Yeah.
But that's what I did. Moved
Yeah.
out to Australia to
Okay.
study the Bible as intensely as I possibly could.
Okay.
I wanted to know just the Bible. Like, is this real? Am I like crazy? Because in the past I was like, this book is boring. It's old. Why would I ever read it? If
Yeah.
I'm reading another book, I'm skipping over the scripture because it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Like, it just is what it is. Like, I was way more interested in hip hop culture. Like,
Yeah.
it was just like,
Let's go.
that was where my passions were.
Yeah.
And so moved out to Australia, was questioning everything. And we were studying 12 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Wow.
And so say it was Genesis week, for instance, we would read Genesis 5 times through during the week.
Yeah.
And then we would, which takes like 4.5 hours each time.
Yeah.
And then we would essentially develop our own commentary by the end of the week. And so, man, by the time I was done with this program, I had like 20 pages of notes on every book of the Bible.
Wow.
And I knew that I was supposed to do something with it. I just didn't know what yet.
Yeah.
And so I thought the plan was to move back out to Australia and to teach at this school.
Yeah.
But God really kind of changed my heart there and was like, no, I want you to teach people all over the world instead. And gave me like a full vision for what became the Bible study.
Yeah.
So I literally knew like what it looked like, what the layout was supposed to be. I knew the plan of attack on getting there. And I spent the next year creating it because for me is like, I wanted to create something that is going to help people that were in the spot that I was at a few years ago that aren't able to take a year off and go out to a school and really study, but somebody that can actually dive into the word at their home and spend a few hours a week really digging into it. And so when it comes to the Brand Sunday and the Bible study and really everything that we've created, it's all because it's something that I knew would have helped me a few years prior. And I just have spent a little bit of time growing and seeing and learning some cool stuff. And so I put things together that I wish I would have learned. And so it's really everything we do is something that was for me originally.
Yeah, bro. You know what's so beautiful about that? I just love how it started with a problem. Like there was something that was wrong and you were trying to figure it out. And from there birth this beautiful purpose. And we might touch on this a little later on. I feel like nowadays when we try to start something or try to build something, it starts with the wrong motive or the wrong intentions, or it's just to make as much money as possible. It's like, and even when me and my friends get together, we're like, all right, what can we do that's gonna make us 6-7 figures, right? But what I love about your approach was you weren't even trying to build something that will build you an empire. You're like, yo, there's a problem at hand. I want to figure it out. And from there, God kind of gave you the building blocks and the vision to the Bible study. Speak on that a little bit. Like what?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like I
think like I grew up as an entrepreneur. So the way that my mind works, like I started my first company when I was 9 years old. The way that
Wow.
my mind works is I see a problem and I find a solution for it.
Mm,
And
mm.
so, like, I think that's the way that any entrepreneur is supposed to think, or at least any successful entrepreneur thinks.
Oh,
We can
good.
come up with cool ideas all day, but at
Yeah.
the end of the day, if they aren't solving a problem,
Yeah.
then they're just a cool idea and they
Yeah.
aren't actually going to turn into something. And I
Yeah.
think when you are solving that problem and seeing a problem and creating a solution for it, that's
Mm,
where it's actually going to grow and it is going to help people. And
yeah.
the end result of that is you're going to end up crushing it yourself, you
Yes,
know?
sir. Yeah.
And so, like, even with the Bible study, like, I created the Bible study first, and then we were like, yo, we want to release a planner, but
Mm,
my business is called the Bible study. I
yeah.
can't release the Bible study planner. So we ended up creating the brand Sunday after the fact, creating like the umbrella company, and then the Bible study was a product of the brand Sunday. But
Mm,
that was an afterthought. This was
yeah.
literally just a one project thing. But
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not going to put the Bible study on a t-shirt, but I think if I put the Bible is good for you or the brand
Mm,
Sunday on a t-shirt, it might be
yeah.
dope.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, man, that's I think for anybody, like, anybody that wants to start a business or do something cool for the kingdom is like,
Yeah.
yeah, find a problem and develop a solution for it.
That's so good, bro. So good. Well, one thing I love about the brand Sunday and the Bible study is it's aesthetically pleasing. And I think for
Thank
whatever
you.
reason, yeah, man, it's beautiful. And for whatever reasons, when Christians, when we do things, we don't think about how creativity could enhance whatever it is that we're creating. I know now we're getting better at it, but
Yeah.
for the longest, I feel like creativity and excellence was on the back burner. What was the
Yeah.
heart behind that? Like, did you always know? I mean, you said at age 9 you had an entrepreneurial mind or what have you, but like, what
Yeah.
made you? And I know you did talk about how you struggled with the Bible being boring and trying to understand
Yeah.
it better, what have you. So, do you feel like creativity was one way to kind of entice or maybe draw in people, or yeah, what kind of,
Yeah.
how did you come to that conclusion of like thinking about how
Absolutely.
the aesthetics looked? Yeah.
100%. That's I think when it comes to any business, like, if you don't market it well and brand it well, then it's just going to remain a business. Like,
Yeah.
everything has to do with the branding and the marketing
Yes.
of a product, no matter what you create. And so with the Bible study, like, if I was to just send out a document of my notes, it would be pretty boring and it wouldn't help that many people.
Yeah.
But if you make it look cool,
Yeah.
it turns the Bible into something that you can engage with so much easier.
Yeah.
And it may not necessarily, like, help you in the moment, but I think it's an internal thing where it's like, oh, this is a lot lighter than
Mm,
heavy. This is a lot easier to hold on to, and it's a lot less overwhelming than it
yes.
was before. Like, when you look at the Bible, it's literally like this entire thing is black and white and it's
Yeah.
just a lot of words.
Yeah.
Like, that would be boring most of the time
Yeah.
to a lot of people, especially if you have never really dug into the word before. Like,
Yeah.
it's intimidating. It's like
Right.
so many pages,
That's
and
right.
where do you start?
Yeah.
And so with the
Absolutely.
Bible study, it was like, man, let me make this as easy as possible and make it as less intimidating as possible for
Yeah.
somebody that hasn't spent a lot of time in the Word. For somebody that's like, hey, I know that I'm supposed to read the Bible. I know that I'm supposed to grow my relationship with God, but I
Yeah.
just don't know where to start. And I don't,
Right.
and I don't want to be overwhelmed anymore. And
Yes.
so we were like, man, let's throw some color on it. Let's make it look cool. Let's
Yeah.
design it so that it's
Yes.
modern and trendy. And from
Yeah.
there, like things just continue to grow when it looks cool and when the branding's done well, because people share about it on Instagram, they
Yes.
post about it, and from there, like, your business grows. But it starts with helping one person at a time
Yeah.
and making it as, like, easy and unintimidating as possible.
That's so good. That's so good. I heard a pastor once say if Jesus was living in our era or our generation,
Yeah.
he would be in the movie business, because
Wow.
the way he would share the word is by storytelling, giving parables.
Yeah.
Very
Totally. I
rarely,
love that.
You know what I'm saying? Like he was creative,
Yeah.
he understood his context, and he tried to make it as
Yep.
applicable as possible. And so I love that. And we serve a
That's
God
great.
who is the epitome of a creative. Like you go out and you see the
Yeah,
sunset, and that's his work, you know. And so I love it.
totally.
I
Yeah,
love it.
and I think more people need to understand that, and especially creatives in the church, because I think so
Uh,
many creatives are focused on seeing what's cool in society and copying it. And
yeah.
instead of like yo, you have access to like creator God.
Yes.
Like the
Yes.
God of the universe wants to partner with you and co-create the world together. So why are
Right.
we looking at like everything that Virgil's doing and then writing our church's name on the side of our shoes?
Yeah.
Like, it's dope when Virgil does it, but it's not dope when you do it. Like, we
Exactly.
need to
Yeah.
be like ourselves and think for ourselves and
Yeah.
and come up with cool ideas, because we are creative beings. So we
Yeah.
need to actually be producing instead of just taking and replicating.
That's
Like
so
when
good.
Kanye's album dropped, when Drake's album dropped a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
like every youth group was redoing the design for church on Thursday night.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
stupid is that? Like,
For
what?
real. And corny, might I
Why don't
add.
we go?
Yeah.
Yeah, like how we can't think for ourselves so often anymore. We have to we have to duplicate what's already out there.
Yeah.
I think it should be different, but
That's so
that might
good.
just be me.
No, no, I'm with you, man. I think it's a Minneapolis thing. You know what I'm saying? Do you know?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with who Andy Crouch is?
I know who he is. Yeah, what was his book again? That was
Culture making. That was the one that
culture
really,
making. I thought I was thinking decision making, but yeah, culture making.
yeah. And
So good.
so good. And to your point, he says Christians so often critique culture, condemn culture, copy
Yes.
culture, but where are the Christians that are going to contribute to culture? And so,
Oof, that's so good.
you know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
where are they? Like, please
Yeah.
stand up.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Exactly. And I feel
yeah,
like Christians should be at the forefront of this because like you said, when we sit and think for ourselves and tap into
yeah,
who God is and learn and grow
yeah,
about who he is, like we should, there's inspiration there, there's vision there, there's all these things that come about because we just serve an infinite God
yep,
and who's unlimited by our own
100%.
resources. And so, man, I
But I
love
think
that.
I think we try to do too much, and I think churches try to do too much. So
Yeah.
there's always so much on our plate, so we become like human doings instead of human beings, and we're always producing. And when
Oh,
when
good.
we have so much on our plate, then we have to start copying other people and duplicating what's already out there, because we just don't have time to think for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so if we actually did have the time to slow down and maybe say no to a few things, but say
Yeah.
yes to what's actually important, it would
Yeah.
change the game for everybody.
I love that. That's so good. That's so good. As you're saying that, I'm actually on sabbatical right now in LA.
Come on,
And part of the
let's
reason I'm
go.
here is for that, just to slow down, say no to some things
Yeah,
and think and
yep,
process and pray and connect. And it's been so
totally.
good. So I'm with you on that.
That's awesome. Good for you, man. A lot of people don't do that, and I literally think it's one of the most important things that we need to do, especially in the culture today. Is like,
Yeah.
yo, slow down. Even if it's like you're doing it as a sabbatical. How long are you on it for?
All month of October. Yeah.
Amazing. Like the fact that you can do it for an entire month is incredible. But
Yeah.
if you start small, and anybody listening to this, if you do it
Yeah.
half a day a week and
Yeah.
then try to get it to 1 day a week, like to
Yeah.
practice an actual Sabbath would be
Yeah.
incredible. It allows you to like actually refocus, see what's important in life,
Yes.
and continue to bring the kingdom into your sphere.
I love that. Yeah. I think sometimes we get it wrong where we work to rest, but what I see in
Yeah,
scripture is from a place of rest we work, and those
always,
are
always.
completely different. Yeah, I love that. Well, I think
Yep.
this is like a great segue into your new book that just came out, called Launch
Yeah,
with
come on.
God, and you're encouraging all of the creatives and everybody who's got an entrepreneur bent to kind of launch not
Yeah.
alone or in a silo, but with God. Tell us how that came to be and
Totally.
what inspired you to write this book.
Yeah, man. So literally, as I was saying, like ever since I was 9 years old, I've been creating businesses just because I love creating things.
Yes.
If it was a necklace that I was making for myself, how can I make a bunch of these necklaces and sell them to other people? Or
Yeah.
if it was like I wanted to wear my own clothing. So like huge fan of Pharrell my entire life. And so
Yes.
I'm like, yo, right when I was 18, it was like the year that BBC and ice cream dropped. And I was like,
Mm.
Pharrell wears all of his own clothes. That's so cool. I want to wear all my own clothes too. So
Yeah.
like I would literally make shirts for myself and then just end up selling them. Whether it was
Yeah.
that or the music business I was in for a while or TV, like whatever I was chasing after, it
Yeah.
was always like something just because I love creating. And since I had tried so many things, I had failed so many times.
Mm.
Through all the failures, I had learned quite a bit about what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so, for some reason, over the last 10 years or so, I get asked pretty often to grab coffee with people so that they can share their ideas, what they're working on.
Yeah.
And they just ask me for their insight on how I can help. And it was funny because for so long, like, I had zero successful businesses. I just tried a lot of stuff,
Mm.
and people still wanted to know my input. And so when it comes to us building up the brand Sunday, having it do really well and help so many people, like I finally had the example of all my practices working. And
Yeah.
so what better way than to put it together, package it together into one book,
Yeah.
Launch with God.
Let's go.
And
Yeah.
now when people are reaching out, like you can go here and learn way more than you could learn over 30 minutes of coffee with me. You can learn
Mm.
so many different tools for what worked for me, what didn't work for me. And it's
Yeah.
not the end all be all business book by any means.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just like all of our other products. It's going to hold your hand. It's going to walk you through the basics, because
Yes.
when you're starting a new business, like where do you go? Where do you go to figure out like what the first steps are?
Right.
There aren't a
Right.
lot of resources out there. And
Yeah.
so with Launch with God, it was really my heart to create a product to help somebody that knows they want to create a business someday.
Yeah.
And even if it's just a side hustle to start,
Yeah.
and from there, I help groom you and give you a few tools to really make that become a reality.
That's
And my
good.
whole thing with it is like I don't want this to be just like any business, like as we were talking about, as you mentioned, like business to me isn't all about like making money and hitting fame. Like
Yeah.
I think businesses need to be about impacting the kingdom and doing something alongside God. So
Yes.
even if that's small things and they aren't like Christian businesses, but
Yes.
like yo, like if you're bringing love and joy and peace to a situation or a person's life, or you're helping somebody or serving them, that's amazing. Like say you
Yeah.
create a coffee shop, for instance,
Yeah.
and you're using like all fair trade beans. Awesome. And then maybe you give 10% of your profits back to the groomers or
Yeah.
something along those lines. Maybe you
Yeah.
have a clothing company, and every month you have one day where you go give some of your extra like mock shirts to homeless people. Like
Yeah.
whatever the
Yeah.
case is, like let's turn it into something small and
Yeah.
actionable to actually help your community to
Yeah.
love God and to love the people around you. I mean, that's what our calling is. That's what our goal in life is. So
Yeah.
why not turn that into your business? But I think so many people, they think of business and Christianity as two completely different things. You
Yes.
have you have a lot of people that are like, man, if I want to be a true Christian, I need to be a pastor or I need to be a missionary. Like,
Yeah.
get out of here. That's not true at all. Some people are called to that, which is
Yeah.
incredible, but that's
Yeah.
not everybody.
Right.
You can start a clothing line and still serve God at the same time.
Yeah.
So my goal is to really merge the two together, to really co-work with God on the dreams that he's placed in your life in order to change the world in an incredible way.
Yeah. You said so many good things there.
Hey,
Like, I'm like, there's like 3, 4 things I want to pull
man.
from. And so be patient with me. the first
Yeah,
the,
no.
the first thing you brought up was how, man, people don't know. Okay, let me start it off. Let me preface it this way. I think anybody
Yeah,
that doesn't know you will look at the Bible study and be like, yo, look at him. He's successful. He's killing it. And then they might get inspired to start a podcast. They might get inspired to write a book. They might get inspired to start a clothing line.
yeah,
They might get inspired to start a record label or what have you.
yeah,
And then
totally.
it fails. And then they're like,
Yeah.
well,
Which it
maybe it
most likely
wasn't
will the
exactly.
first few times.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I want to get at is I think like we're afraid of failure. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes too, when we fail, we instead of pivoting, we throw it all away. And so I wanted you to kind
Yes.
of unpack a little bit like what gave you the drive to keep going and not let failure stop you from pursuing whatever it is that you believe that God had put on your heart.
Totally. I think a lot of the times like we need to embrace failure. I think you can learn so much from it. I literally failed probably 7 times
Yeah.
before anything I ever did
Yeah.
made like before anything I did, I paid myself $1. Like literally with the Bible study, we
Yeah.
were working for 2 years. I had 17 people that I was paying, and I hadn't paid myself $1 from it
Wow.
that whole time. And
Wow.
so like it was a side hustle for 2 years, but I'm literally like employing people
Yeah.
and I'm still working a full-time job on my own. And so I
That's
think like people quit their jobs way too fast and
mm,
they just pursue their side hustle right away because God gave them an idea for it.
yeah.
But if you look at scripture, if you look at history, usually God gives you an idea for something and then it's years later that it
Yeah.
actually comes into fruition. Like a seed
So
doesn't
good.
grow right away.
That's
Like
so
it
good.
takes time. You need to water it, you need to garden it, you need to
Mm,
groom it, and then eventually it's going to grow. But we live in a culture that's so fast paced, all instant gratification. We see people that quote unquote make it overnight. But what you don't see is the 10 years leading up to them making it
yes.
overnight. You don't
Yes.
see all the failures and the perseverance and the struggle that did get them there. And so
Yeah.
when we are working on something and we launch a product and it doesn't do well right away, well then it's on to the next one because obviously there was something wrong with the first one, which is so
Right.
twisted. I
Mm,
think I think often these things happen to us on purpose in order to grow from them. And
man.
and maybe it wasn't the right time. Maybe it
Yeah.
needs to be something that we launch years later. That
Yeah.
happens to me all the time. I
Yeah.
get pumped up about an idea and I'm ready to, I literally will release something a month after I create it and or a month after I think of the idea just because I get so excited. But
Yeah.
that's not the way that
Oh
we've
man.
never seen success
Come on, man.
like that.
Come on, man.
The only time that we've ever seen success, the only time that my friends have really ever seen success is when it's been a process, it's been a grooming. You try things, they don't work, you pivot, and
Yeah.
it's in that pivot, it's in that standing up for
Come
the
on, man.
eighth time
Yes.
that things actually do come into fruition and it works out to be the way that you intend it to be and that you've always dreamed of it being. But
Yeah.
it's a process.
I love that. I love that. And I believe like the process is helping us grow in the kind of person that God wants us to be. Like there's purpose in it. Like the
Yes.
40 years that the Israelites were in the wilderness was purposed by
Yes.
God to get Egypt out of them. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
And
for
so
sure.
yeah, and my dad always tells me if it's an overnight success, don't trust it because as fast
Yes,
as it
amen.
comes, it will go just as fast. And
Yep,
so
that's it right there.
yeah.
But we see it happen so often, especially in like the internet age, where
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you can drop ship and make 6 figures in 2 months.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'm going to quit everything and do it. Oh, I can like get into NFTs out of the gate and spend all my money. Like
Yeah.
maybe that's not the smartest idea. Maybe like you need to let things play out a little bit and see
Yeah.
what it's going to turn into and if it is actually going to work.
Yeah.
And like that's why we get like that's why the lottery is so popular. That's why
Yeah.
people have all these lottery prayers where it's
Yeah.
like oh man, I can put down $2 and I have a chance of winning $50 million. Oh, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
But it never happens.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with our prayers, or with our dreams and our prayers. Like, oh, I can set this up in a week and I can make 200 grand.
Yeah.
No, it might work for some people, but that they're an anomaly. It doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
The majority of people, the majority of really successful entrepreneurs were successful way later in their life than all these young hustlers are. Like my goal, I was always grinding, always trying to have like side hustle after side hustle, because I wanted to make $1 million by the time I was 26 years old.
Yeah.
And then I hit 26 years old and I was sitting in a car in the parking lot outside of Starbucks. I had just lost my job. I had just lost a relationship. My side hustle just ended and I was ready to like give up on my faith and everything. Wow. And so like, but it was that, like, it's that perseverance, it's that continuing on that is actually like what needs you and what helps you to grow into hitting those goals that you may have for yourself. But it takes so long. It takes so much time to get there. So it's like, you got to embrace the process over anything.
That's so good. One of my favorite hip hop artists, you mentioned you're a hip hop fan, is Jay-Z. And Jay-Z, one of my favorite quotes from Jay-Z is he once said,
"I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman."
I'm a businessman.
Is that what you're gonna say?
No, I wasn't. But that's
I thought that's what you were gonna say.
That's tough. No. But second to that, he says, the most genius thing we ever did was not give up. The most genius thing we did was not give up, because they're just like, how did you become a billionaire? And he's like, we just kept trucking along. We just kept going. We didn't give up. The business record labels didn't want to sign us. We started our own. We started selling CDs from the back of our trunk. Like Jay-Z popped off at 26, I believe, 26 or 27, which is late for a hip hop artist. Like if you,
for sure, most
artists get signed like 17, 18, around that time. And so, but yeah, man, he just didn't give up. He kept trucking along, and Jay-Z's Jay-Z.
He's a beast. But and if you look at like all the billionaires in the world, if you look at like multi-millionaires, most of them didn't make their first million until like mid to late 30s. Like it's not common to make $1 million in your 20s. Like all these people, they're amazing, but it's because they spent 30 years getting there. Like it's not, this isn't a, oh, I'm 22 and like, because I saw this person crushing it at that age, then like, and they're so much younger than me, then I'm like behind. No, that's not it at all. We just get so like distorted from what we see in the media. And like what you said, like so many of these young dudes are getting like record contracts at like really young ages. Like what, Mac Miller was like 15 or something. Like same with Chris Brown, same with J. Cole. Like these dudes, when they were first releasing their albums, they're young. And so we look at it as so much comparison, like, oh man, I'm 22, but what these guys were doing at 18 is like way bigger than what I could ever do. So I'm behind. I'm 34. I just turned 34 2 weeks ago.
Happy birthday.
I feel like, thank you. I feel like I'm so young and I have so much time now because I shifted my perspective. But I didn't have that for the decade prior, because I was always set on, oh, I need to get this done by this certain time, because that's a goal that I put in my own mind for some reason that didn't have anything to do with reality. And I think so often we have such a warped perspective of what life is, and what we put these goals that have nothing to do with anything, like, oh yeah, I need to have this done by the time I'm 24. Well, most people don't have these things until they're way later on in life. They've tried a bunch of stuff, a bunch of things have failed. A lot of them have gone bankrupt, but they persevered, they kept going, and that's when they actually see success. I actually talk about it a bunch in Launch with God, because I think it's such a fascinating topic. Like you have all these people like Walt Disney, Oprah, like like Truett Cathy, so many people that were trying, and they maybe they got fired from their job, and they're like, well, forget you, I'm going to go start my own thing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they persevered with their own thing, and it blew up, and it became Walt Disney, like it became Disney World,
Yeah.
and their Disney Corporation, or
Yeah.
you have like the O Network. Like
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
were things that came out of failure
That's
and
so good.
wanting to do it themselves.
So
And so,
good.
yeah, maybe somebody isn't going to believe in you. Maybe somebody isn't going to stand behind you and
Wow.
write you a check right now for a
Come on,
book
man.
deal, but you can
Come
do
on,
it
man.
yourself.
Come on,
When we were
man.
starting out, I was pitching the Bible study. Actually, my senior year of college, I wrote 2 books for my thesis.
Wow.
I don't know why, it was crazy, but I was like
You just
pitching
different,
it to
bro.
all. Yeah, I was pitching it to all these literary agents, because I'm like, oh, that's what I need to do. I need to do it myself, and that's how I'm gonna have a book pop off.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you want to know what? I don't need them. With the Bible study, I'm just gonna do it myself and learn everything that I can.
Yeah.
And when you do it yourself, it's a whole different process, because your blood, sweat, and tears are all in the project.
Yes.
And you aren't like going back to that lottery prayer of hoping that a huge agency picks you up,
Right.
or a huge publishing company picks you up.
Right.
Make it yourself. Do it yourself. Create your own platform. Create
Yeah.
your own product, even
Yeah.
if it's going to take maybe 5 years longer, but it's going to be worth it, because you're going to grow and learn so much in the process.
So good, bro. So good. Listen, I feel like we could spend another hour on this topic alone, but I got so many other questions I got for
I
you.
love it. Come on, whatever you got, man.
Man, another thing you brought up is just, man, in Christian culture, we've made pastors and missionaries varsity and
Yeah.
everybody else JV. And
Yeah.
even for me, man, like I'll be honest with you, growing up, I had a heart for people, and I felt like
Yeah.
the only way I could serve people is by becoming a pastor.
Yeah.
And I didn't have people around me that would tell me, nah, there's so many different avenues that you can
Totally.
take to make much of Jesus and serve people. And so
Yeah.
can you speak to that? Did you ever wrestle with that? Like, why do you think in Christian culture, we think like to make the most impact for God, I got to be in the
Yeah.
pulpit?
I think it's because that's where we see people that are like really Christian having jobs, and you don't see, like, you aren't looking at a CEO of a company and being
Right.
like, oh, I'm gonna love this company now because the dude's a Christian and he's crushing it. Like,
Yeah.
it's just not in the spotlight like that.
Right.
And I think so often we put these ideals in our own minds, where it's like, dang, if that person is like, that person's a Christian, I want to be like them one day.
Yeah.
I need to be a youth pastor. And then from there, I need to be a senior pastor.
Right.
And then from there, I need to be a celebrities pastor, because that's how you grow. And then from there, like, I'm going to be surrounded by all these celebrities that I'm going to pastor.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have this view of like, oh, that's where I want to be, and that's what I want to do one day, so that I can make something of myself, so that I can be successful, so that I can be surrounded by people that are really cool. And I think the heart in it is just completely warped from what it needs to be. And I think a lot of people need to be told that it's okay to have a business that's not even necessarily a Christian business, but you can just run it with Christian ideals. And from there, like, I know a lot of people that are running businesses that are impacting the kingdom more so than some pastors are.
Yeah.
But people just aren't. I think they need to be given that permission. They need to be told that it's okay.
Right.
And then they need to be told that that's like even an option, instead of us putting these ideals in our minds of like, yo, the only way that I can do this and the only way that I can be a real strong Christian is if I'm a pastor. It's just not true.
Right. It's not at all. Yo, I just found out recently that the CEO of Caribou, for those who are like in Minnesota, know Caribou, is a Christian. I was
amazing.
Like,
this is so awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so you're so right. If we had more people like that being highlighted, it would give us a bigger vision for maybe what God can do in and through us. And so I 100%. Love that.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
Which kind of leads me to the next question I wanted to ask you. How does one discover purpose? Like, I know that's a heavy question, but a lot of the times as young people, we are stifled by options.
Yep.
And shout out to Instagram. You go on Instagram and you're like, oh, someone started a podcast. Let me start a podcast. Oh, somebody started a clothing line. Let me start a clothing line. Oh, somebody wrote a book. Let me write a book. But like, how do we hone in on maybe the gifts that God has given us? And I mean, even in that, like God has given us gifts that can be used in different ways. Like one gift doesn't need to apply one way or what have you. And so, what did you touch on that in the book at all? Like, just how does one kind of discover maybe what God would have for them, and to nurture that, to cultivate that, and to really mature and grow that?
For sure, man. I think there's so much there. It's because we compare ourselves so much to other people, like you were saying. Like, we look at Instagram and it's like, oh, that person's doing it, I need to do that too. And we just jump on things and we try things out because another person is doing them, they were successful at it, and then when it doesn't work out, we stop it and we move on to the next thing. And I think there's so many aspects to that. I think we need to learn that it is okay to not just be a pastor, and that it's okay to run a coffee shop and still be a believer. And then stop comparing yourself with other people. Slow down and actually spend time with God, instead of just allowing the people around you to speak into what you should be doing. I think society so often tells us that we need to do this and this and this by the time we're certain ages. We need to be married. We need to have a good job. We need to have kids. We need to do all these things in a certain progression. But maybe God's plan is a little different for you. Maybe you don't have to do all that by the time you're 26 years old. Maybe you are going to be 32 when you get married, or 40, or even later. And that's completely okay. I was 32 when I got married, because I was always like focusing on grinding, and I would have done things way different. But at the same time, I learned so much from it. And so I think a lot of people need to slow down. I think they need to spend time in prayer. They need to spend time with God to learn what his heart is for the world, and then also how you can partner in that. I think people need to look at, okay, what talents do you have? What do you have that comes natural to you that you can easily modify and turn into to benefiting your business? I think you need to understand what your spiritual gift is. What's your role in the church? How can you impact the church? Maybe you are a teacher or a pastor, which is incredible. Like, we need you. We need people to be studying the word and teaching other people the word. But maybe you have the gift of giving. So maybe you have the ability to make a lot of money, and your role inside the church body as a whole is to fund it. And which is incredible. The church wouldn't function without you either. So figure out what your spiritual gift is, and figure out what you're interested in. Look at like what you actually care about, and not what society tells you that you need to be caring about.
So good.
Maybe you love fashion. Maybe you love classical music. Maybe you love writing books. Like, whatever it is, figure out what, like, even if it's super nerdy, maybe you love collecting Funko Pops. Like, that's awesome. Like, maybe you love Naruto or anime. Like, whatever it is, you can figure out a way to bring that back to, okay, what's your spiritual gift? What are you naturally gifted at? And how can you use that to impact the kingdom in a positive way, to impact the world in a meaningful way, even if it's just bringing love, joy, peace, like any of the fruit of the spirit, like into your daily interactions and the people surrounding you. Like, how do you love your neighbor better? How do you love God better? That's what's most important. We can't get caught up in just copying other people and doing what's cool right now. That's
so good. You're dropping gems. Like, seriously, one of the reasons, so every time I go on sabbatical, I'm off social media. And one of the reasons why I'm off social media, so that I can actually hear my thoughts. And I could hear from God, because sometimes you think it's from God, but it's really an Instagram post, or you think it's
100%.
And so I love that, man. I love that. So good. Here, I got a couple more questions. I know we could be here all day, but I won't do that to you. you're in your title, Launching with God, you also say building a business that matters. What does that mean when you say building a business that matters? What
Yep.
are you trying to get at, and what's the message behind that?
Yeah, man, I think it goes back to what we were just talking about, like something that is actually going to matter in
Yes.
society, something that's going to like give a positive impact to the people around you, to your neighbors, to your
Yeah.
family, to those that you interact with down the street,
Yeah.
instead of those that you interact with across the country. Like focus on where you're at,
Yeah.
and bringing the kingdom to that place, no matter how big, no matter how small it is. Like maybe it is just one small thing. Maybe it's like In and Out, how they put a Bible verse on
Yeah.
the bottom of their cups.
Yeah.
Like most people wouldn't realize that, but they have like there's that,
Yeah.
or Forever 21, they have a
Yeah.
Bible verse on their bags.
Yeah.
Like something small, like you can, even if it's just something like that, it can have an eternal impact on somebody's life because it'll make them curious. Or maybe it's like I said earlier, like you have a clothing line and you're giving away shirts to the homeless once a week or once a month. Like
Yeah.
just those small acts are going to create conversation for the bigger picture.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So good. I have a good friend who designs shirts, and
Yeah.
he like he's like, it's blowing up right now, doing crazy
Yeah.
things. And
Amazing.
one thing that he does is he takes 10% of all
Yep.
that comes in and he donates it to a charity.
So awesome.
You know what I'm
Come
saying?
on.
And
That's
so it's like,
incredible.
yeah. And he's like, the people that are buying it aren't all Christians, and they have no
Yeah.
idea that their money is going to support people that
Totally.
are in need, And so I love
I
that.
love that. I think that's so cool. It's like
Yeah.
in Tulsa, do you know Transformation Church?
Yes, of course. How can we not?
So
Yeah.
yeah. So like the team bought the entire block that their building is on. And so
Yes.
it's literally like where all these different companies they're paying rent to the church essentially because they
Yeah.
own it. So they
Yeah.
have no idea that like that's funding kingdom purposes. And like
Golly.
that's really cool to me.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's the way it should be,
Yeah,
on earth as
exactly.
it is in heaven, bringing heaven
Totally.
down.
That's what
I,
it's about, man.
that is. I love that. Let me ask you one last question for those that are tuning in right now, and
Yes.
maybe they're stirred by this conversation. Maybe they're hearing your story and maybe what this book is about. By the way, y'all should cop the book. Shameless plug
Thank
right
you.
now.
I
Launch
appreciate
with
that.
God.
Come on.
Yeah, yeah. If you enjoy this conversation, this book is, you need to
Yes.
grab it. But what would your encouragement be to them? Maybe they're listening and they're afraid of failure. Maybe they're listening and they compare themselves. Maybe they're listening and they don't know what their purpose is. Or maybe they're listening and they don't know where to start. They've got a bunch of
Yep.
ideas, but they don't know what that first step looks like.
Totally.
How would you encourage someone to launch with God right now?
Yeah. Man, I think the biggest thing is slow down, take it one day at a time. Like, yo, you don't have to complete all these things tomorrow. You don't
Yeah,
have to be a success tomorrow.
yes,
Like, this might take you 10, 15 years. That's
yeah,
why it's so important to really find, okay, what is God calling me to do?
yeah.
Not just what's cool in the moment.
So
Like,
good.
what passions and dreams have been placed inside of me from a long time ago, maybe they're
Yeah,
recent, but what it's going to stick around and not run its course and be old news in
right,
6 months. And
right.
so
Yes,
slow down, figure out what you were created for, how you can impact the kingdom, your neighborhood, how you can love God better, love people better, and
yes,
stick there, man. If you can
yes.
make an impact in somebody's life every single day in a positive way, I think you're doing something right.
I love it. I love it. So good. I love
Thanks,
that.
man.
Man, thank you for your time and your wisdom. And man, we're rooting for
Absolutely.
you, bro. We're rooting for
Thank you,
you.
man. I really appreciate that.
One last question before we get out, because I know you're a
Yes.
Minneapolis native. And so
Yes.
I gotta ask you. Blue Door
Ah,
or
5'8".
Nook? The Nook.
Or Nook.
Or Matt's
Oh,
Bar. I'll give you those three.
you
Juicy
aren't even going to
Lucy's, where you
include
gonna
five
take?
eight on it? You aren't going to include 5'8" on it?
I've actually never been to 5'8".
5'8's the best in my opinion.
Oh, see, I need to go to
Yeah.
5'8". I didn't know.
I mean,
Okay.
I'm typically between 5'8" and Matt. So I end up hosting a lot of people in town when they're here. We bring a lot of friends up to my business is in Minnesota. And so I end up taking a lot of people out to eat. And one of my favorite things to do is go literally back to back. We'll have a Juicy Lucy from 5'8", and then we'll drive straight to Matt's and have a Juicy Lucy from there to let them decide for themselves. And that's a fun game that I love doing. I'm gonna have to do it with Nook and Blue Door though. I am a fan of Blue Door. I don't think I've ever had Nook. But when at the end of the day, I love 5'8" because not only do they have great Juicy Lucy's, but they have waffle sweet potato fries with a blue cheese marshmallow sauce. And that will make your toes curl. That thing is another level, bro.
I gotta go now. Now I'm itching to go back to Minnesota.
Come on.
Try this out. Listen, I had a funny story. Like I brought a friend to Blue Door one time. He's from LA and he's never had a Juicy Lucy. And I kid you not, the first time he took a bite, tears rolled down his eyes. And before he could finish his bite, he called the waitress and ordered another Juicy Lucy.
Yes. And that's a man after my own heart. Come on.
And so
I love it. Man. Nothing like a Juicy Lucy, bro.
Nothing like. I gotta check out 5'8" now. Now that you say that, I gotta give that a try.
It's one of the originals
for sure.
Do it, man.
Well, thank you again for your time. For everybody tuning in, I hope this blessed you, this encouraged you, and until next time, family, peace and grace.
Yes.